BeHuman.love. And I am Katherine Bird.
I'm Eddie Fasula.
And we are starting this project together, which is actually the culmination of a huge project that we've been working on together for the last 5 years. We came together and have been in deep ceremonial work and shamanic work and working with our guides, our ancestors, and working on receiving this body of work for years, working in our communities. And this is the expression of a huge portion of our lives coming from our individual paths and then our paths together after we've met.
My path, just to get to specifics, my background, I was trained as an engineer, and I got into blacksmithing when I was right out of engineering school and had some kind of shamanic connection. I felt that there was something ancestral coming through that, which I didn't really tell anyone. It was weird to me. I had a mentor at the time who had a lot of influence on me, who was trained also in blacksmithing in Old World Bavaria, a physicist, and he encouraged me to go down that path of blacksmithing, and somehow through that, it led me into a shamanic path, into a path of connection with my ancestors and spirits. And I've recently found that in 2020, there was some ancient DNA testing that locates me in ancient Anatolia, which is now Turkey, near the Hittite capital, in the copper working age. And I've seen that my ancestors have been influencing me, even though I didn't know it. So I've just been more conscious about it. I've been awakening to that, and also been participating in ceremony with Turtle Island Indigenous people, and that's had an influence on me since about 2006 or so. And so I've been knitting together those Anatolian ancestors and my Turtle Island ancestors, and really looking for a way to talk about this in the modern world. And that's not woo and out there and just all about abstraction, but how it is that all of us have our ancestors walking with us. And what is our purpose here as spirits having a human experience, and finding that together and reconnecting the pieces for those of us who have not been raised in an intact Indigenous way, that have come from the scattered background of the Western lineage of the modern age.
Yeah. Personally, I had a really radical spiritual awakening in my 20s, and that led to a lot of channeling and energy work and finding my road as a healer and having to walk that path, which is not a path that I knew was open to me. It wasn't something that I knew that I could ever access growing up in really quite suburban Texas background of pretty normal background. And so when I had this really radical mystical awakening, I began to question everything and let everything go and truly transform who I thought I was and what I was capable of being. And through that entire path has really confronted me with who I am as a human, who I am as a Western person, as a white person, who I am in context of the work that I'm called to do in the world. I've done a lot of different healing modalities and trained with a lot of different teachers. And then I've been mentoring and training healers, specifically healing and therapeutic practitioners, spiritual practitioners, and those called especially to working with the unseen realms, people who are looking to work with their guides and their teachers, and those that realize that there's something more, that there is this intuitive awareness, there is this human understanding of who they are at a really deep level, and that there hasn't been context or place for that in their lives so far. And so when you're going through this kind of transformation where you're moving from being in the standard Western model of who we're taught to be as humans, which is an expectation really that we're going to be and perform in a very specific kind of way and fit into society and be like everybody else and not be too weird and get your job and your partner and your kids and your retirement and your capitalistic endeavors and consume, and maybe you get to take some vacation and then that's it. And I think that a lot of us are experiencing that life is more. Life gets to be more. Life gets to be more than we were told. And yet on this path, then when we start to open up to this, we don't have wise elders in our own lineage. We don't have practices and activities that are anchoring us to our land. We're not connected to our homes. We're not connected to each other. And so we as Western people are these lost orphans in a lot of ways, who also come from lineages of destruction, colonialism, empire, and have contributed to a lot of destruction of the lineages that we then are trying to grab onto in our effort to understand ourselves. And so on this path, for me, it has been a lot of deep personal reconciliation of who I am and restoration of myself, of my own soul, and then helping other people to find themselves so that they can live a life that feels fulfilling and expressed and truly authentic and sacred. And that's something that feels like it hasn't been permissible to us. We haven't had permission to live that way in such a long time. And we don't know how not to be just destructive and consuming and extractive. And so even though we have these awakenings and these understandings, there's this whole pathway of healing ourselves and understanding where we come from. And so that's what Eddy and I have been looking at, is why this is important right now. Yes, okay, we as Western people need to heal ourselves. We need to understand ourselves. We need to connect to our ancestors. It feels like there is this collective need right now.
Yeah, I think I can talk in a testimonial to what you just said. I can speak to that because it's been a long journey for me. Like I mentioned, blacksmithing when I was just right out of college, but coming into this in the sense of a responsibility to that inner knowing, and then my contribution to society is new for me. I'd say around the time of COVID, when I was involved in industrial logistics globally. And when everything shut down during COVID, it was a time of peace and quiet and reflection for me. And that's when I returned here to New Mexico, and Kat had recently moved here to New Mexico. It's a very sacred, powerful place. And for me, I've had a lot of growth here in my time in New Mexico. So I was in this place with reconnecting with some elders and Indigenous people and getting re-involved in ceremony. And when Kat saw me as you have this capacity, I think you may be able to say better, but when people, you see what their gifts are and how they can bring their gifts to the world. You have this general capacity with that. You've worked with lots of modalities, lots of different people working with different modalities. And when you saw me just doing my thing, just figuring out life and taking a break from the corporate world that I was in before and rooting more into my Indigenous connections, family, and the land here, and were recognizing things in me. And I was seeing like, oh, okay, so this person who's doing this kind of out there stuff to me in my world is recognizing a resonance of where I'm coming from. And so it was this awakening for me and realization that we all have this capacity to know ourselves, to communicate with our ancestors, to walk in a more holistic way as humans, a more conscious way, aware of being spiritual, a way of recognizing that we are spirits having a human experience. And it's not just a thing you do when you go to ceremony. It's not just a thing you do when you go to church or whatever your practice is, but it's actually being aware constantly of our experience, being a whole human. So for me, that's been like putting the pieces together for me. And more recently in these last few months, as I've been helping with ceremony, shifting into a place of, instead of coming to Sweat Lodge to just figure out my own journey and why I'm there and get through it, actually coming and helping and caring for other people, then I started to recognize that these gifts that we're given are meant to share, that it's really the healing or the wholeness and the integrity that I feel everyone is searching for really starts from caring for others, connecting with the land and connecting with other people, and in a way that's caring for them and caring about them. And I realized that this long journey for me, this kind of dark night of the soul, reflecting like, why am I here? What am I doing? Like, where do I belong? All of these things that have been for me a long journey of discovery and reflection, I realized, oh, this is a journey that is common to all of us who have come from this industrial society background where we've had our connections to our ancestors scattered. And it's really about sharing it with other people. It's not just, this hasn't happened just for me. This has happened, what I've gone through, what I've grown through. I've experienced things and learned things that are to share with other people in a very humble way, and recognizing that everyone else is going through very similar things in their own way. And so this, for me, is an opening for that I want to open up for the people who resonate. I want to be here for you. I'm looking for support in doing that, and reflection and community in doing that. I know there are people we're all in different places on this journey, and there are going to be people that have learned things that I haven't learned yet, and there are people that are just starting to learn some things that I started to learn 20 years ago. So it's really about coming together. In my heart, this is what I'm looking for. And so opening this and bringing up the topics and the things that I've just been really voraciously going through, and sharing that and seeing who resonates with that and building on that together.
Yeah. I think because so often we can have this spiritual awakening, spiritual journey, transformative arc of life, and we can be so in it because it is so personal. It's such a personal thing for each one of us. And so it's hard to come forward and say, this is the journey I've been on, and this is what I've learned, and I have this wisdom, and I have these questions still. But it feels really important that we, especially as Western people, do this because of where we have gotten collectively, where we have in our society, which has really taken over the entire globe, we have created things that are destroying everyone and everything. And when we're on our own individual journey in these works, we will often come to this moment where we have to look at ourselves really deeply and confront ourselves, you are not eating right, and you are not exercising right, and you are not in right relationship with the natural environment, and you're not in good relationships with your family or your partner or your kids or your work that you're doing. You don't feel purpose. You don't feel meaning. You don't feel excitement. You are not loving enough. You're not letting yourself be loved. Like all of these things that are these personal awakening moments and these things that inspire us as an individual to do our work, whatever that work looks like for you. Go to therapy, to go to ceremony, to journal, to do your practices, to meditate, to start to change, to make fundamental and lasting changes. We have to do that for ourselves as a group too. We have to see that this isn't just an individual journey for us to take. This is something that we need to bring into the community. We need to bring into the collective. We need to learn how to be in community with each other and have these hard conversations and have these illuminating conversations where we realize that we're not alone. And let's talk a little bit about this, where we're going, these possible roads of our future. What are we seeing? What are you seeing as far as we stand at these crossroads where we're at right now, where we've been at these crossroads forever, maybe?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to what you're saying as an individual, that a big realization for me has been in following my ancestral path. Is that they came from ancient Anatolia to southern Italy, part of the Roman Empire. This whole trajectory is part of a common spiritual lineage for the West, and the learning as a social organism over time, like what have we all been through that have this similar lineage? And it's a learning path. There's this reckoning that you're talking about as an individual that I feel that we need to come to as the West, as the people, to say, what are the lessons that the fall of the Bronze Age? It's very similar to where we are now. So this recognition that there have been cycles that have been repeating for thousands of years, and knowing that context, then what can we collectively say we've learned? When we talk to people from other cultures who know their lineage, and they can tell you about the whole trajectory of their people, what can we say? Are we aware of where we've been and where we are now? I think most people are not. We're blocking off really truly learning our history and looking at history that we can digest and that feels happy to look at. And actually going into the darkness and going through some of the hard lessons that we've learned. That's the gold that comes out of that, is recognizing, okay, we've been there before. Let's not repeat it.
Yeah. And you can't unless you confront those things. And so if we look at where we've been the last few thousand years as a collective dark night of the soul of the Western peoples, that there is this opportunity at this moment to witness ourselves as coming out of that, as giving ourselves permission not to just be wallowing in our own shame and fear of what's going on, but to see that we are emerging from this darkness where we learn. We learn in the darkness. We think that we learn when everything's good and it's light, but if you think about your life, you learn when you're in pain. You learn when you make mistakes. You learn when you hurt people, and then you recognize, oh, I don't want to be that kind of person anymore. So we have to see that where we've come from in the last few thousand years with the rise of patriarchy and the destruction of the environment and taking over entire cultures and destroying so much, that we've been destroying ourselves in that process, and that it is through that destruction that we arise, that we learn, that we grow, that we transform, and that we get to take that choice. That's what we choose, because we can choose to pretend like this isn't where we're coming from, to pretend like this hasn't happened, to pretend like we haven't been and are participating in this right now, and put our blinders on. We can do a bunch of spiritual practices and make ourselves feel better. We can sit around and light and love and be like, aren't we cute? And everything's fine. Don't look at any of the hard stuff. and we can gaslight ourselves into feeling good about what we're participating in, or we can choose, we can make a choice to recognize who we are, where we've come from, and find that reweaving of our own threads, coming back to something that is whole, coming back to something that is earth-based, coming back to something that is community aware, and that is life positive, that is having a positive beneficial impact, that we're choosing that intentionally, not just for the people who are privileged enough to have access to the spiritual practices that are going to help them understand where we're coming from, but for everyone across the planet. And so this is what we've been choosing, what we're choosing in doing this. The purpose of doing these videos and this body of work is in seeing this vision come to life that we've been sitting with for years, and looking at how do we strengthen ourselves, not as a way of like power over other, but as a strengthening of our inner wholeness and our sacredness, our awareness of our sacredness, our unique identity, our unique calling in life, that we have a calling, that we're allowed to even have a calling, because I think that we've been taught that we don't actually get that. We don't get purpose. We don't get meaning. We get a job, a family, this, that, but we don't get to feel that we are sacred because of where we come from. And we don't even want to look at where we came from because it's too hard.
Yeah, and I think that one part of the hard feelings people have around that from the Western lineage is because in more recent times, Western people, our systems, our governments, our kingdoms, so forth, have been so exploitative. And that recent history is difficult to look at. If you go further back, that in the Bronze Age time, in the Mediterranean, every single culture that was participating in this global trade was doing the same thing. It was really a matter of aligning mythology and spirituality, the gods, the temples, everything to serve the individual empires that were in competition, but it was also a system that the conflict was part of the whole story. There were unique, every culture had their unique resources to be exploited and exchanged across the Mediterranean. And so it was this vying for holding position. And this had been going on in 1800 BC coming forward. These kingdoms and around Greece and ancient, what's now Turkey and Egypt, and in these regions, there was competition between these kingdoms, and oftentimes kingdoms were wiped out if they didn't have a standing army, if they were not protecting their resources, if they were not trying to take over the competition that were their neighbors, then they could be taken over. So this is a long thousands year bloodbath, really, competition in this way. And so we're talking about accessing the time before we got into that, before that was the norm, before, as being a member of a kingdom, your responsibility was to the king and to the king god, or the gods that protected your armies, and this whole alignment of the person's sole purpose to this collective through the kingdom. This whole mentality has been morphed over eons into now it's patriarchy and patriotism. And it's somehow that aligning with these, what now have become patriarchal religious systems and political systems, and everyone aligns, the men take their role, the women take their role, and then it all has to be in alignment with the progression of whatever political system you happen to be living under. And that's the end of it. And that's not That's not the original instructions of what all of our ancestors, the way they lived. It was responsibility to the land, to the tribe, to the people around you. It was a heartfelt connection, and every individual had their own soul's journey. Common sense was, we are all spirits having a human experience. Every single one. There's a sanctity in all life, not just human life as well. There's a spirit in everything.
So one of the important pieces that we've discovered is that the historical context is actually important for us to understand. Is that the things that we learned oftentimes in school were very narrow, very incomplete. We don't often know very much about our ancestors personally, or our ancient ancestors, especially, like anybody who we would consider having a whole community or connected to the land. We don't understand these important shifts in societies that created the structures that we're now living through. And so there's going to be videos about history and different moments in history. And this has been something that Eddy's has been completely obsessed with, of learning all of these things, and especially looking through the Western lens, of course, into the Mediterranean and what is now Turkey. And because there's so much of our Western thought, our Western structures of what we think about philosophy, medicine, science, technology, that has economics, that has democracy, all of these things that we hold on to now, we're especially moving through these areas. So it's important to understand these things, even if your people aren't from here, because they're impacting all of us. And so you might be saying, oh, what about my Celtic ancestors? And I feel connected to those, and great. And we want to explore those too. And hopefully we're going to be bringing in some people to help to explore different lineages and traditions and these pieces as well. But we really have come to recognize that if we don't understand where we've come from, we have a really hard time choosing where we're going. And so we want to bring that cultural understanding for ourselves, and also because it helps us with our ancestral work. It helps us to do healing work with our ancestors, to understand where they were coming from, the journeys that they were taking, the choices they were making, why they made the choices that they made, and especially as Western people, to re-engage these ancestral traditions that we've lost and start to listen and hear from our ancestors in a way that's healthy for us and that's helpful for us. And sometimes as Western people, we are one of the only peoples across the planet that doesn't have ancestral veneration, that doesn't make an ancestor altar, that doesn't sit and talk to our ancestors regularly, that is usually disconnected from even a burial place or a homeland, what we would consider a homeland. That the ancestral work is important for us, because without that, we're the orphans of the world. And we come with a neediness and a graspingness and a hungry ghost, extractive nature to other cultures, because we feel the depth of their roots. We feel the depth of their experience, their ancestral awareness, what they're showing up with. We can, even if you don't think you feel it, you can still feel the ancestors that walk with people who have these practices. And when you don't have that, you are like that kid in the neighborhood that didn't really have a great family and that was running around to other people's families, like trying to get a meal and trying to get a ride somewhere and trying to figure out who they were and trying to get some advice, because you don't have anybody giving you advice. You don't have a trusted elder in your home helping you to find wisdom in life. So this is another piece that we found is really helpful and important for this work. And I don't know, Eddy, you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I think when you talk about choosing where we're going, knowing where we've been so we can choose where we're going, there's a certain inevitability that the planet is going towards unity. We don't have a choice. We're going to either destroy ourselves or we're going to figure out how to live on the planet together. And it's at this point now where it's become so extreme that I feel this is a really powerful, essential reason to be doing this work, as I see the need for people to connect with other cultures in a way that carries integrity, in a way that we can bring our gifts as people from this Western lineages, those of us who have this lineage. How do we bring this in a positive way and come together in unity? And I want to express this bridge to what we call the Turtle Island people, the people of the Americas, the indigenous people of the Americas, who I've been so blessed to have elders and connection and have ceremonial experience, and I've grown a lot. I've been heavily influenced. And as I've had this personal journey with that, and it's really based on personal relationships. It hasn't been about, I want to have this shamanic experience and I want to go meet these people and get into the ceremony and learn how to sing the song so that I can lead other people. And it wasn't about that at all. It was really just people that I met that came when I was in a place of great need, when I was in a place of great darkness, and feeling that love and that connection and that appreciation, being seen and being held in these traditions, in these ways, and then feeling that responsibility to carry what I've been given in a good way in the world. And I see the reaction to people who haven't had these blessings, to their relationship with what they hear or they experience with Indigenous ceremony, Indigenous wisdom, and this way that there's a fetishization of that now among some people who are so hungry for something, and they see that as the source of something they're hungry for, when actually the source is within us, within our own lineage. It's just much deeper, so it needs more deep work. But the good news is that my experience has been that my ancestors, I've seen that as I've learned who they are through ancient DNA testing and through finding on my mother's side that I have Mohawk lineage, that my ancestors, as I've learned this now as I'm older, my ancestors have been influencing me and walking with me this whole time. Now I realize this. So we all have this within us. It's all totally available. And we're at this time when the world needs to come together. We are coming together into unity. This has to happen. And so I would like to help contribute to how we show up so that not only do we as Western people not miss out on this beautiful opportunity for unity, but that all of the other cultures don't miss out on what we can really bring if we get our act together, if we get it, to keep it clean here.
Yeah, get it together. I think that this is one of the most important pieces, is that having been involved in spiritual communities and ceremonial work and all of these things, just witnessing over and over again how hungry people are for ceremony, how hungry people are for spirituality, how hungry they are for community. And then they dive into something and it's almost as though the healing of myself is put on the back burner to, okay, what am I getting from this Indigenous community or these practices or, these people that I'm either trying to get something from, please heal me, please care for me, or I'm trying to save. And I'm fetishizing them. I'm infantiling them. Is that right? I'm treating them as an infant, right? I'm making them like, oh, they're so cute. These cute little Indigenous people that I'm going to show up and save and build them a well and do the right thing. Because I know what they need, because I'm so smart and I can help them to manage themselves. It seems that those are really common ways that we engage with Indigenous people, or we're just so pushy. We're so want everything immediately. We want to know all their secrets, and we want to know all of the practices, and we want to know everything so that we can then take it and then go make $1 million teaching it to other people. And instead of really allowing for this beautiful sacred relationship to emerge as something that is collaborative, and the need for us to be able to be with Indigenous people in a different way, to not be pushy and sometimes just so rude. I've just seen Western people be so rude and entitled. And I think that entitlement is something that we've been raised in, but I think it comes from the core essence of not-enoughness. That I'm not enough in my own lineage, in my own knowingness of the sacredness that I am, to simply be, to simply sit, to simply be quiet, to simply learn in a slow way. And these are things that I think that we struggle with in the spiritual community, and we don't recognize them enough. We don't recognize our negative impacts.
I think it's a shopper's mentality, really.
Yeah. Like, that's cute. Give me that.
Yeah, I think I'll go for that. What am I getting out of it? Okay, am I being a good shopper right now? And we don't realize there is a neediness in it that's built into being a shopper, right? It's like, I need to go out into the world and exchange what I've done in my work as an employee to be a consumer and get back what I sacrificed by giving up my life to go do something that I don't really care about. Now I want to go get something that I care about with my money and my time and my energy. And so we're going into these amazing opportunities, not looking at in the traditional way of coming with a gift, coming with gratitude, and coming with an ask just to be allowed to participate and be there. We're coming with this attitude of, here I am showing up with my donation and my time, and this Sunday afternoon is really important to me. So if I'm going to spend all afternoon in your ceremony, then, you have a responsibility to please me, right? So this is all, I think, just it's so ingrained in us.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't think that we're not doing it on purpose. We're not doing it in a conscious way. It is unconscious. And so some of this work really is around deconstructing, right? Understanding where we've come from and understanding why we do the things we do so that we can change the way that we are and shift. And so that's where a part of this work is about our own personal development, our deconstruction, our own personal spiritual development. Because when you don't have your connection to your guides and teachers, when you're not solid with, yes, I can have an anchor into, this is good for me, this is right for me, this is not right for me, my intuitive awareness and understanding, my energy is able to read what's going on, then you are always grabbing and grasping and needing from others. And it's up to us to do the work, to do our trauma healing and our nervous system repair and to our intergenerational trauma repair, to be able to be embodied, to live inside the body and to live fully inside the body so that we can live in relationship to life, that life is living through us and life is living through all things, and that we're in relationship with all of those things in the seen and the unseen world and with all of these other humans, and that we get to be in this collaborative embodied experience all the time. But
connected
a lot of
to
us
the
aren't.
land is a big part of that. Yeah.
And some of the work that Eddie and I, it's interesting because when I was first going through my awakening, some of the first messages that I was getting was, go just go be on the land, just go sit on the land, learn how to grow things was an important one. Be around the green people, right? It was just like, go and learn how to grow things. So I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I'll go take a permaculture design course. I'm going to go become a master gardener. I'm going to go help little kids in the inner city build a garden. Those were the things that I was like, I don't know what to do. So this is what I'm going to do to start to get this information, start working with teachers who are working with plants. When learning how to have deep spiritual connection with plants, to talk to them and to listen from them. And when Eddie and I met and we were looking at soil restoration projects and things on the land, and we were out digging and planting and looking at how in this beautiful landscape where we live in New Mexico, it's also very harsh and very challenging to grow things. And how do we feed the soil? How do we feed the land? And that these embodied experiences that we have with the land, with the fire, with the water, with the elements of the earth, translate into our ability to be embodied within ourselves and to be in an embodied relationship with everything else that exists.
That's interesting that you bring up that in your awakening, it was around living things. And for me, it was around metal, fire and metal. And there was a few decades where I was clear that I don't work with living things. I work with metal. Somehow that became my story, which is silly when you start to recognize that there's spirit in everything. And there's a whole human lineage and relationship with metal, just like there's a whole human lineage and relationship with the lineages of the plants and seed saving, that we have co-developed ourselves with these plants, corn, wheat, these cultures that honor this history, and with the animals that we used to hunt. And then there was the domestication of animals, and there was a sacred relationship with domesticated animals, which has been forgotten now and disrespected. But that was there. The metal is the same thing. And ultimately comes back to the connection with the land and that disruption of the extractive relationship with metal is core to what broke these other relationships with animals and with plants.
Yeah.
So for me, it's interesting that we've taken this. I've just now come into soil restoration and plants and things, but this is interesting how we come at these journeys from different places.
Yeah. And I think we all have these different sort of elemental frequencies that we operate within, and that there are our siblings that are here with us all the time, speaking to us. And I think that it is important for all of us. As a trainer of practitioners, my intention, and someone who teaches spiritual practice as a pathway to connective experiences with the unseen realms, it is always of the highest importance that each individual person is in the process of discovering what is for them, the path for them, the way they receive, the way they translate, the way that they intuitively know things, the way that the spirits are showing up for them and the elements are showing up, and who is there waiting to guide you. And when you finally learn how to speak to them clearly, you realize, oh, they've been guiding me this whole time. And so within that, then we get to each one of us bring our unique medicine or our unique gifts to the world to help people in our unique way. We're not designed to all do it in the same way, but we think that we should. And so a huge part of my passion is really in helping people to find, like, what is that unique way that love really, if we want to talk about what being human is, that love is moving through you. And it's going to be unique for each one of us. And that's actually truly challenging for many people. because we want to look outside of ourselves and go, oh, it looks like that. And that's one of the reasons we attach ourselves so much to like Indigenous people and what their practice looks like, is because it seems so clear. It's so precise. And we're like, oh, if I could just be precise and clear in that way, that person is, or that lineage is, then I would have it all figured out and I would like, it would make sense. But it's actually a bit of a challenging path to be willing to find out what your unique way is, to figure out, oh, this is what's been calling my soul this whole time. Mm. And I was too blind to see. Mm. And so that is some of what this work is about, this idea of what does it mean to be human, and this awareness that we all have these different pathways, that we're going to get, a lot of us, to the same place, but to these different teachers that we're being asked to work with, whether it's a plant or an animal or metal or fire or the water, that we have these sacred relationships that are intrinsic and innate to each one of us that deserve our time and attention, because we're going to get so much out of it.
And I think, do we want to say a little bit about the struggle? Because I think, like for me, I experienced that as an engineer, as a guy who I've got a capacity to go out and make my way in the system. It gets baked in. Why are you struggling with this thing, right? Like, why don't you just ignore that? This like inner calling, this trying to figure out your true, what your heart really wants. Just go do just be grateful that you can do a job. You've got the education, go do your job and focus on that. And that'll be the end of it. And don't distract yourself with these other things. And then on top of that, when you start to go down that path, you start to run into challenges. You start to run into the dark night of the soul. You go through things that can feel really depressing, really challenging to look at. It's not all fun. And we have this knee-jerk reaction, I believe, or I've experienced in myself, is that, and I expect other people have it too, is that when you start to you push up against these things, something from thousands of years of conditioning says, don't go there. Just look for something love and light and fun. And instead of like actually facing your fears and going into the darkness. And so Kat and I both have struggled and sacrificed to be on this journey. And we know that other people are struggling and sacrificing to be on this journey. And that's okay. And I think that the coming together, it's essential. It's part of it. In the ancient Greek mystic tradition, they knew that you would be taken apart by the dark goddess and reassembled. Like, that's part of an initiation, is letting go of who you were before and up-leveling, becoming more deeply connected with spirit, with who you really are as your inner spirit, remembering that, who you were before you came here, and then connecting with other people in that light, recognizing that, becoming more aware and awake. And so there are sacrifices and challenges, and coming together so we can reflect from one another, so we can make some sense of it, so we can have some encouragement, some recognition of some of the things that come up, challenges of your ego, trying to label things and change your actual trajectory into something that your brain can handle. And coming together in these ways, I think the mutual support, making this invitation, is what I feel is where I am really right now. And so I'm asking for reflection in the comments. Come to our Substack, which we'll link. Really interested in people's experience of what resonates in this. If you've watched this far, then something's resonating. I appreciate that. I would love to hear what is resonating with you, and support us to, if this is helpful for you, then I would love to be able to take more time to do more research, to do more writing, more videos, and share this with you and share your experiences with the community that we will hold space for. So the support that you bring to us, our intention is to bring gifts to you, is to hold space for you, for all of us to share gifts and connectivity in this very difficult and very beautiful adventure.
So we're going to be making videos collectively together with guests. We're going to have some in-depth writings on Substack. Our website is BeHuman.love, and you can sign up for our mailing list. Our first program is Restoration of the Western Soul, and really getting into ancestral healing, mystical, traditional practices to connect to our guides and teachers, with reconnecting to the goddess and to understanding where we came from before the last couple thousand years, and understanding ourselves and our own contribution and collaboration, and how do we see unity as something that we're actually an active participant in, because you mentioned unity before, and a lot of times in spiritual circles, I'll hear people talk about unity consciousness, and that it's as though unity is only a consciousness that's out there, that is something that when you're able to drop into the really deep meditation, or if you can get to the 11th dimension, then you will access unity consciousness, and then that will transform you, and that's what it's all about. But oftentimes when we do practices, we will have this awareness of unity consciousness, this awareness we are all one, this awareness that we're all connected. We want to look at also, how are we actively a part of unity? How are we actively working in our communities and creating things and being collaborations and being uncomfortable, because that stuff is actually uncomfortable. Like being in meditation and going, oh, unity feels so good, it's so yummy. That isn't the hard part. Like that part is the part that you do so that your system can manage the actual doing. And I think for a lot of us, we've really forgotten that, or we never learned it or something. But we've been like, oh, the whole point of spiritual practice is the practice. The whole point is that I'm doing my practice, and aren't I spiritual, and aren't I evolved, and aren't I of a higher consciousness? Because I eat right, and I do my practice, and I meditate, and I don't watch YouTube before bed. And so look at me. When, no, the whole point of doing all that stuff is so that you can manage interacting with other humans and build something beautiful together. Because we're the hard part. Unity consciousness is not the hard part. The 11th dimension is not the hard part. This is the hard part. And a lot of us want to escape it. We don't want to be here. We're like, oh, it sucks. It's dirty. It's stinky. It's uncomfortable. It's expensive. Could I just bag out and get rid of this meat suit and just get on with my participation in this higher consciousness, higher dimensional experience, multidimensional self that I am but I think for me, I'm like, what's the invitation that I can have the awareness of that multidimensional self that is experiencing maybe all things at all times at this exact moment, but how am I translating it? Am I translating it into what I'm doing every day as a doing thing, because I have a human body, because I have been blessed with this bioform that interacts with all these other bioforms and with the bioform of the earth to create, to do what we came here to do. We would love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear your reflections and questions and all of these things as we follow these different threads. And thanks for being here.
I think that this is a really powerful beginning. I'm looking forward to going down some of these rabbit holes that I've gone down together. Metal is one path, and just looking at one particular thing, domestication of animals, language. There are different aspects of our history that's really fascinating to look at within the context that we're creating.
Thanks. See you soon.
See you.